Hi everyone. In this two-part series, I'm speaking with Monica Botkier of Botkier HandBags. Now, in the first show, we spoke with Monica about how she got started in the industry, how she got her bags into Barney's, and today we're talking about how she sold her business, how she built it and sold it, what she's learned, and what we can learn from that. When did you sell the brand?
So initially, I will say, I really do want to talk about the process of selling your company, because selling a namesake is an emotional experience, I would say. There are people obviously that go into business, B-school types that come up with ideas and have a 3 to 5 year exit plan, and they just keep rolling with businesses. Right. This is different. I was a creative, a photographer, an artist, if you will. This was a design-driven idea. Yeah. And while I consider myself a business person, it's in the organic sense. I think that in terms of everything you need in fashion, price point, distribution, design, quality, all of that is natural for me. Strategy and the retail landscape was not something that I knew before I got into it, Yeah. And so I will say that prior to the recession, when the brand was super hot, I was chased by everyone you could imagine. I had meetings with Stuart Weitzman. As I said, Delphine Arnault came to see me multiple times in my grungy but cool downtown office. Yeah. There was a lot of like, wow, the possibilities are endless. But then the reality of spending so much time doing diligence and conversation after conversation, and it's very male dominated too. And this was not my background. So in the beginning, I didn't have any investment banker represent me or anything like this. And it became overwhelming and I couldn't focus on the brand. And the bigger the brand got, the more I started to think, this is a legacy for me. I have children. At that point, if you can imagine, I started the company in 2003. I had my first child in 2005. And then right as the recession hit, I had one kid and then another back-to-back 13 months apart. Yeah. So, in 2007, I decided to take a break from entertaining these conversations. My last really great hurrah with that was Stuart Weitzman. It was really fun to get to meet him and talk to him over multiple occasions. But he was someone who was very singularly focused on his own brand. And so at the time, his backers wanted him to acquire, and he wasn't really that interested in acquisition, even though I still think that would have been an interesting marriage between the handbag and shoe, because to this day, they haven't gotten their bags right, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. And I only half got my shoes right at the time. So, I think it's definitely, it'll spin your head around and get you thinking all kinds of things. And the reality is that making a good deal, just because you're a founder and just because you're entrepreneurial, does not mean you know how to navigate the world of investment, honestly, especially when people are after you. And that was a learning curve. So I took a break, and then then I came back into it, as I said, but then the world collapsed and M&A was dead for 2 years. Yep. So at that point, it was very difficult. Retailers started multiple years of cancellations, and everything had to be changed. The upper contemporary world that I was in kind of got smashed into just contemporary. I had to pick a lane. We had, the young designer crew came in, the Philip Lims and Alex Wangs and all of that. And designer sort of became more attainable as my customer base started to grow up. And then also the mindset changed. Like, people were willing to eat ramen noodles for 3 months and buy a Chanel bag for $5,000, which, my bags were 10 times less than that. And, things change. So one thing, note, if you really look at the history of brands, you understand that they only stay at the pinnacle for a certain amount of time. And then it's a lot of work to kind of cycle back. Yeah. And some do and some don't. Right. I mean, so many of the brands that I came up with that were big at the time where are they now?
Right.
You know, some really, one or two got really, got much, much bigger, but most of them died off. And so mine got to stay and play, which was nice.
Yep.
And then, you know, I had a difficult year, 2 years after, 3 years post-recession, because for me, my business flatlined, it didn't dip. Because there were all kinds of new options. Suddenly Rue La La and Gilt Group existed, and there were ways to basically keep your margins intact. And so it was just like having another huge wholesale account that made up for perhaps where the Bloomingdale's or the Nordstrom dipped. And so after that, though, marketing became a really extraordinary expense. You know, we all know that there's no organic anything anymore.
No, there's not.
You have to pay to play everything. Mother of 3, you know, suddenly I got mortgages. Like I was just a single happy lady when well, you know, I was like, whatever. And then suddenly I was like, I don't know how to manage this. And, you know, I started to feel like it made sense to take on a partner. But in the end, you know, I think many founders find it's difficult. It changes the landscape, it changes the culture. You know, all I'll say on that matter is I made the choice I made. I stayed post-acquisition for 5 years and parted ways. And so now I have nothing to do with the company. And, you know, I think that we tried to make that work, but ultimately there wasn't a long-term play for me there.
Yeah, well, partnerships are hard. I've had partnerships that have succeeded. I've had ones that have failed miserably.
Yes.
They're hard, you know,
they are,
personally or professionally sometimes. But yeah, I mean, I guess looking back on that, and I too am a mom of 3 and have gone through that whole transition, not necessarily of priorities, but like kind of life focuses and like what you're willing to give up, what you're not willing to give up. And like looking back on it, are you like, I'm really happy that my namesake is still out there? Or are you like, I wish it would have been different?
It's a bit of both. It depends on the day you catch me. I feel like I still love handbags. You know, I've been consulting now for a few years. I've been looking for the passion to get me to actually start something again. But you know what it takes. It takes everything. So for now, I've been happy consulting, but I've started to come up with some things that I think will work for me. And, you know, when I first left my company, I was like panicking. I was like, okay, I need to start something else because I didn't know how to define myself without my brand.
Yes, right.
And it was really hard, I have to say. It was emotional. And I came up with all these ideas, and honestly, half of them were pretty good, but the execution, I couldn't get it past a point because most of them were more conceptual, needed a lot of funding. It's like I kind of leveled up in some ways. The way I started my brand was so organic, you know, it was one sketch, one bag. Then I found the resources and built it up. This was much more, the ideas I was coming up with were much more digital focused, much grander.
Probably more sophisticated.
Much more sophisticated. And I wasn't ready to take on, I mean, I don't know. I listened to how I built this, and some of those stories, I'm like amazed that people even could raise money for half-assed ideas, really. It's like, there's a talent to that. And that's not something that I ever did. So,
you know, what's really fascinating to me, and that I have been thinking a lot lately, just being also in the consulting world and startups, and is nothing is organic anymore. You're right. Everything is pay to play, customer acquisition. Yes. There's no grassroots anymore. And also the noise of consumer products blows my mind. Like, it's really commoditized. And so that emotional connection to, you know, how you organically drew a picture of a handbag, you went and you made it yourself, and then you had a friend who was interested in it. That is so rare these days. And it's like, I kind of miss it, you know?
I do too. I mean, I think that it exists somewhat, but it gets sped along so quickly. And, people jump in to make it huge fast. And, also the idea that the marketing spend rather should outpace revenue just because you're VC funded. Like that makes no sense to me from, I always joke about myself as being like, old school, like the Apple vendor or something. Like it's got to make dollars and cents, right? The idea of throwing all this money because you're looking for the unicorn so the losses don't matter. That's a really interesting, I don't know. I think it pushes a lot of smaller talented people and brands under, because you can't do that. You really can't do that. And expect everything to rise to the top. It's like you just, floating it with money. Yeah. But I have to believe that, some of the brands that have come out, they do really stand behind what their achievement and their goals really are. So you've got some, what I would call sort of like smoke and mirrors and just nothing brands. And then you also have brands where you can tell the founders really care. But this formula of like raise money, spend 3 to 5 to 7 years, blow it out, go out onto the next, I think brands fall flat a lot. And when I sold my brand, I really wanted to be part of the new chapter and really evolve it. But, again, it's hard to align sometimes, right?
Yeah. There's a white space anymore with handbags. I mean, obviously figuring out sustainability, that piece is, but like, is there anymore a such thing?
I don't think so. When I started, there really truly was.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine there was no Mark by Marc Jacobs, no Philip Lim, no Rebecca Minkoff even. There was like nothing. There was Coach and Chanel and nothing in between.
Nothing between.
So no, I don't think so. I think that you can carve out your space. I think you can do some interesting things. Certainly you're reaching a lot more customers than you would just by selling to the top department stores and cool boutiques across the country. So you have the customer base is more alive and more available. So there's a lot more people to sell to, but the parameters I think around what they want and when they want it have changed. Yeah. So no, don't think there's really a white space. I mean, there's just every bag for every kind of occasion at every price point.
Yeah. And I remember when I saved money to buy Prada's nylon bag.
Yeah.
Remember the Prada nylon bags?
Yep. Mm-hmm. That's in now.
I wish I still had maybe I have one somewhere.
Well, you know what? You can buy one on eBay or Simon's. I mean, they're out there.
I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me, and hopefully we can like connect on a project or something.
Yes, would love that. This was great. I love talking about this stuff.